Have you ever thought about the invisible safety net that protects the medicine you take? I mean, really thought about it. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most critical parts of that system, the intense detective work that kicks in whenever something, even the tiniest detail, goes off plan. So let's just start right there. What actually happens when there's a little hiccup in the super precise process of making a drug? You might be picturing flashing lights and chaos, right? But the reality is actually a highly structured, systematic investigation. It's a whole process designed to make absolutely sure that the medicine that reaches you is perfect, nothing less. Okay, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to define what a problem even is in this context. Then we'll look at the two main flavors they come in, planned versus unplanned. After that, we'll crack open the official playbook for how they're handled, dive into the actual detective work, and then the fun part. We'll see how it all plays out with some real-world examples. Let's do it.
All right, first things first, we have to define our main character here, the deviation. Think of it like a super precise recipe for baking cookies. The recipe says bake at 350 degrees for exactly 10 minutes, but you bake it at 360 for 11 minutes. That little difference, that's a deviation. Now, just imagine that recipe isn't for cookies, it's for a life-saving medication. Suddenly the stakes are, a little bit higher.
So in the pharma world, what does this actually mean? Well, simply put, a deviation is any time you go off script. It's that moment when what actually happened doesn't perfectly match what was supposed to happen according to the official procedure.
And here's the official textbook definition. But what I think is so cool here are the words they use. It's not just a mistake or an error. No, it's a measured difference. That little detail tells you everything you need to know about how data-driven and precise this whole process is.
So why do they care so much? Why all the fuss? Well, it's all because of very strict regulations. We're talking about good manufacturing practices, or GMP, which are basically the golden rules for quality. And of course, regulatory bodies like the FDA, they require that every single deviation, no matter how tiny it might seem, has to be investigated and documented. It's a totally non-negotiable part of the system that puts patient safety above absolutely everything else. Now, you'd probably think that every deviation is a surprise, right? Some kind of emergency. But that's actually not the case. They fall into two really distinct categories. And this shows you that the system is designed to be proactive whenever it can be and reactive when it has to be. So, on one side, you've got planned deviations. You can think of these as intentional, pre-approved temporary detours from the main road. For example, maybe a certain raw material isn't available, so the team gets formal approval to use a slightly different amount for one single, very controlled batch. But then, on the other side, you've got the unplanned deviations. These are the surprises, things like an equipment failure, a power outage, or even just a simple mistake in the paperwork. And as soon as one of those unplanned things happens, the first thing the team does is classify it by risk. A critical deviation is the most serious. It could actually impact product quality. A major one might have an impact, and a minor one probably has no impact at all. This ranking system is what tells them exactly how deep and how fast they need to start digging.
So, what happens in that moment when an unplanned deviation is spotted? Well, there's no running around, no guesswork. Instead, a very clear, systematic playbook kicks into action, and it's almost always run by the quality assurance team, or QA.
And that playbook has 5 clear steps. 1. The issue gets reported to QA, like immediately. 2. An investigation kicks off to figure out what happened and what products are affected. 3. The real detective work starts, finding the root cause. 4. They implement something called CAPA. This is a 1-2 punch. First, you take corrective action to fix the immediate problem. Then you take preventative action to make sure it can never, ever happen again. And finally, step 5, QA reviews all the paperwork and officially closes the case.
Okay, let's zoom in on step 3, because this is where it gets really interesting. This is the detective work. It's a process called root cause analysis, or RCA. And the goal is simple. Don't just put a bandage on the symptom, find the actual disease that caused it in the first place. And the investigators have this whole toolkit to help them do it. It's not just about getting a bunch of smart people in a room to guess. No way. They use these really structured methods. Things like a Fishbone Diagram, a 5 whys analysis, fault tree analysis. Each one is a specific tool designed to systematically dig for the truth. The 5 whys is just beautiful in its simplicity. You just keep asking, why? So, the machine stopped. Why? Because an operator pressed the stop button. Okay. Why? Because the label on the button was dirty and they couldn't read it. Why? Because it wasn't cleaned properly.
And boom, just like that, you see the root cause isn't operator error. You don't blame the person. The real problem was a bad cleaning procedure. See? That's a total game changer.
Another really powerful tool is the Fishbone Diagram. It helps the team brainstorm all the potential causes by organizing them into 6 key categories, often called the 6 M's. It forces the team to ask, was it the people, the men? Was it the material, the machine, the method they were using? Maybe Mother Nature, the environment? Or was it the measurement tools themselves? This way, you make sure no stone is left unturned.
Okay, so that's all the theory. But what does this actually look like when the pressure is on? Let's walk through a few real-world case studies and see this playbook in action.
So in our first case, a weighing balance was used when it was out of calibration. Oops. The immediate corrective action was to check any product made using that scale. But here's the important part, the preventive action. They didn't just fix the problem for today. They put a whole new, more robust calibration schedule in place to make sure this could never happen again.
Okay, next up, a batch of product had an impurity level that was just too high. Using that fishbone diagram we talked about, the team looked at all possibilities. And when they got to the M for method, they found it. An operator was adding a key chemical just a little too fast. That caused a temperature spike, which created the impurity. The fix? They updated the official procedure to specify an exact, slower addition time. Problem solved for good.
And for our last case, the humidity in a super important clean room went way above the limit. The investigation traced the problem all the way back to a single, tiny malfunctioning valve in the air system. The fix for right now was easy, just repair the valve. But the fix for the future was much bigger. They actually proposed installing a whole new dedicated chilled water line to make the entire system more resilient.
And this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. The goal of this entire painstaking process isn't to find someone to blame. It's to learn. Every single deviation, planned or unplanned, is treated like a gift, an opportunity to find a weakness and make the entire manufacturing process stronger, safer, and more reliable for all of us.
Which leaves us with one last thought. What we've really seen here is a system built on 2 amazing ideas: the humility to accept that things will sometimes go wrong, and the rigor to learn from every single one of those mistakes. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other parts of our lives, or our jobs, could be totally transformed if we applied this kind of structured, no-blame detective work?